Hi guys, it's me, ChazzaHD, and welcome to episode 9 of This Week in Formula 1, where today we are going to analyse, first off, Eddie Irvine's comments about Sebastian Vettel and why, in my opinion, they are correct. And we're also going to look at Renault's comments and analyse their comments about their new radical design for their 2019 car. And if we do have enough time, we're also going to look at the possibility of a second F1 race in China, and also the possibility, after recent news, that we could have a Grand Prix in the Philippines. And all of this is going to be analysed in today's episode of This Week in Formula 1. But first off, we are going to go on to the comments that Eddie Irvine made about Sebastian Vettel. And, well, what he had to say has caused a lot of controversy. There is no doubt about that. I saw plenty of people on Twitter sharing their thoughts, whether right or wrong, about what Eddie Irvine had to say. And, well, it's not new criticism from Eddie Irvine. I think it's been pretty clear over the last few years he doesn't think that highly of Sebastian Vettel or even Lewis Hamilton. I don't think he thinks that highly either of Fernando Alonso, but it's not a surprise to me, these comments, but it is interesting nonetheless. So, let's see what Eddie Irvine had to say when it comes to Sebastian Vettel. So this is what Irvine had to say. I think Vettel is good if he is at the front and doesn't have anybody to race. Vettel, when he is racing, is someone focused as much on the other guy as he is where he is going, and inevitably crashes into the other guy, which happens nearly all the time. I think Vettel is a good driver, but as a 4 times world champion, I just don't see it. I think he is massively overrated. He's a one-trick pony. Now, just to let you guys know, the source, there you can see BBC Sport for that quote. Very interesting comments, but I don't think Eddie Irvine is that wrong when it comes to these comments. I don't see where he's massively wrong on this. And, well, as I'll get on to pretty much now, I just want to first cover really what I saw on Twitter once Autosport and BBC published their articles about this story and about this quote. I just want to talk about first the hypocrisy and the absolute just dumb logic that some people have out there. So the biggest criticism people had for Irvine was, oh, well, you haven't won 4 world titles, you've only won 4 races, what did you do in your career, and all of this stuff. That logic and that argument is so played out and is so dumb, I don't know why people use it. It's so childish. If that is what you're going to use as an argument, you're most likely, depending on who you are, disqualifying yourself from the conversation and disqualifying yourself from having an opinion, because most of us, I think pretty much all of us, me and everyone watching right now, we haven't ever driven an F1 car, but that doesn't mean we're not allowed to give an opinion. And in fact, I think Eddie Irvine is more qualified than us to give an opinion based on the logic of some of these people. And I have to say again, the logic that people are using is so dumb, it's so childish, and if you do use it as an argument, then I have to say that you are dumb, because it's not a strong argument at all, and it just backfires on you, because if you then give an opinion, you're then guilty of what you're criticizing. And I just think it's such a dumb argument. And I don't understand how so many people out there think that's actually a good argument. I thought, in 2019, I thought the world would have come on a bit when it comes to, arguments made for certain things and opinions. But it seems as though we're going backwards. And I'm sure plenty of people, if they are watching and have that opinion, they know exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to that type of logic of, well, you haven't won anything whilst I give an opinion on a driver when I don't have anything to compare myself with. it's so dumb, so dumb. I don't get how people can honestly sit there and present that argument whilst being guilty of the exact same thing. If you use that argument, you're dumb. I'm sorry, I have to say it. You are dumb if you use that argument. But let's move on from that and go on. Before we get on to Sebastian Vettel and why the criticism, in my opinion, is correct, let's first just to teach people a lesson and kind of just remind people about Eddie Irvine. Let me just go through his career and talk about Eddie Irvine. And also, I want to illustrate that Eddie Irvine is actually an underrated driver for what he did in his career. So, in the early to mid-90s, he's driving for Jordan alongside Rubens Barrichello, had some impressive performances, had a podium in Canada in 1995. That's where Jean Alesi had his famous one and only victory. Had that great drive at Suzuka in 1993 where he unlapped himself against Senna, and then Senna, of course, punched him after the Grand Prix. And at Jordan, even though I think he had a 3-race ban for causing a massive collision at Brazil in 1994, he was impressive at Jordan and earned himself a seat at Ferrari for 1996. So he must have been good to impress Ferrari and to partner Michael Schumacher in 1996. And now, Irvine's first couple seasons at Ferrari weren't that great, but you have to remember, and I think people forget this, the Ferrari car in 96 and 97 wasn't that good. You could make the argument it wasn't even the second best car on the grid. It was probably at best at times the third best car on the grid. It's just Michael Schumacher, with the amazing performances he put in, he made the car look a lot better than it actually was. The Ferrari car in 1996 was not able to actually win 3 races with a normal driver. But with Michael Schumacher, who's one of, if not the greatest driver of all time, you can win 3 races. But Eddie Irvine, of course, is not one of the greatest drivers of all time. And he didn't have to be. I think people also need to remember that Eddie Irvine, before anyone says, if you're going to compare, say, Irvine to Vettel, which is an unfair comparison because obviously Sebastian Vettel is better, but Irvine never had the best car. Eddie Irvine never drove the best car consistently during a season of F1. He may have had the best car in a certain Grand Prix, but he never had the best car during a season. He always had, at best, the second best car, if not the third best car. So I think considering the cars he drove and the quality of the cars he drove, Eddie Irvine actually had a good career, in my opinion. And in 1998, had plenty of podiums. I think he finished behind Michael to complete a 1-2 and I think 2 races in France and Italy in 1998, and had a very good season that season, finishing P4 in the drivers. And then in 1999, he came, I think he was 2 points away or a point away from winning the World Championship. Now, I don't think Irvine deserved to win it, even if he did, because the only reason he was able to compete for it was because McLaren had such poor reliability with Mika Hakkinen. But you know, he still did a good job. I mean, he won the first race of that season whilst Michael Schumacher was at the team. Yes, Schumacher got injured and Irvine still couldn't win the title, but the Ferrari car was not as good as the McLaren. And that's not even a debate for that season. The McLaren in 1999 was clearly faster than the Ferrari car. There is no debate to be had about that. Michael Schumacher probably would have won the 1999 championship, but that doesn't mean to say that the Ferrari car was the best car that season, because it wasn't. Even though they won the constructors because McLaren has such poor reliability. For example, the first Grand Prix that season, they had a front row lockout, were on pole by I think a second and a half, were leading by 15 seconds after about 15 laps. And then both cars retired from the race with a hydraulic issue. That pretty much describes McLaren's 1999 season. They had the best car by a mile, but it was very unreliable. And the only reason they won the title was because they had just about enough reliability when it mattered to get the job done. And when it comes to Irvine, again, I think in 99 he had an impressive season, because after Michael Schumacher broke both of his legs at Silverstone, it would have been easy for, for Irvine to kind of think, well, without Michael, there's no real, not that there's no real point, but there's no real chance we're going to beat McLaren for the rest of the season. But in the following two races at Austria and Hockenheim, he won both of those races, and I think he took the lead of the championship at the time. So I think people need to remember that Eddie Irvine was a lot better than some people think. A lot better. And yeah, I think is quite an underrated driver for the type of career he had. And let's not forget also that when he left Ferrari for 2000 to join Jaguar, where he raced until the end of 2002 and then he retired, he had 2 podiums in a car that was stuck in a dogfight in the midfield. The Jaguar car was not at the front of the midfield. It wasn't the 3rd or 4th fastest car. It was normally 7th fastest, 8th fastest on the grid. But he had a podium in Monaco in 2001 and Monza in 2002. So, again, I don't get why people are so dismissive of his career. He was a lot better of a driver, in my opinion, than people give him credit for. And if you disagree, make sure to put in the chat right now or in the comments section. But I think Irvine was a lot better of a driver than people think. And the reason I wanted to go over Irvine's career is just to illustrate that Eddie Irvine was better than people think, and is also a lot more worthy of, of having this opinion of Sebastian Vettel than some people think also. But now, let's get into his criticisms of Sebastian Vettel. The first thing that he praised him for, but it was kind of a criticism as well, is that he is very good when out front and leading the pack away. And there is no doubt about it. Sebastian Vettel is the best driver at that on the grid right now. And I would say, honestly, is probably one of the best, if not the best of all time, at leading the field away at the end of a first lap. Breaking the DRS zone or breaking the DRS 1 second barrier. He is so good at doing that. There is no doubt about it. Sebastian Vettel is very good at that. But if you take that away, then, yeah, when it comes to close racing with, Hamilton, Ricciardo, Verstappen, he isn't as good as people think he is. Now, he has had good overtakes in the past. I remember one on Nico Rosberg in Melbourne in 2012. His pass on Bottas in Spain in 2017. His pass on Lewis Hamilton in Austria in 2018. He clearly is, when he wants to be, good at overtaking. But if you compare him to Hamilton, Verstappen, Ricciardo, he's not as good. And I don't think there's really a debate to be had about that. When it comes to close quarter racing, as Irvine kind of said, he's very reluctant to race the other guy. And he does focus more on the other person than he does himself. He's not, as I said in my Max Verstappen video, which by the way is in the description down below if you've not checked out the video yet. He's not authoritative enough when it comes to his overtaking. He kind of, he will throw it down the inside, but he doesn't do it with authority. Like, I'm coming through, you're not going to be able to turn in. I'm coming through, that is the end of the story. Like Max Verstappen, Daniel Ricciardo, and Lewis Hamilton do. He doesn't do that. He kind of, I think Martin Brundle said this many times before, is when Vettel tries to pass, it's almost like a half-hearted football tackle. It's like dangling his front wing in there, kind of hoping the guy ahead sees him. And again, just hoping that he can get through without any, any accidents. And in 2018, there was clear evidence of him doing such a thing. For example, as you can see on your screen, with Hamilton at Monza, with Verstappen at Suzuka, he didn't really, in a authoritative way, he didn't put his car, down the inside and say, right, I'm coming through, or I'm going to keep this position and there's nothing you can do about it. He kind of dangled his car in there and kind of hoped that the other guy either went off the track or gave him more space. But I'm afraid that's not how it works. You have to be authoritative when defending and overtaking, and Sebastian Vettel is not. And that's a massive weakness he does have to work on. And then the final thing, or the final two things that Eddie Irvine said, was that Sebastian Vettel is a one-trick pony and is massively overrated. Now, when it comes to the one-trick pony part, I disagree. He's not a one-trick pony. He is clearly, he's clearly got more, talent than just leading the pack away. He does have talent when it comes to overtaking. Not as much as Ricciardo, Verstappen or Hamilton, but he does have talent in that area. And, is quick when he wants to be over a qualifying lap. He's not a one-trick pony. He is absolutely not a one-trick pony. But when he says massively overrated, this is the thing. It depends on the person and how they rate him. If you, for example, rate Sebastian Vettel as the best driver of all time, yes, he is massively overrated because he's clearly not. There is no way Sebastian Vettel is the best driver of all time. And to be honest, maybe not massively overrated, but if you, in my opinion, put Vettel in your top 5, I would have to say that Vettel, due to where you've ranked him, is overrated, because I don't think Vettel has shown enough evidence to suggest that he is one of the top 5 F1 drivers of all time. So it depends where you rank him as to whether he's massively underrated, overrated, or massively overrated. So let me know in the comments and also the live chat, how do you rate Sebastian Vettel all time? Is he number 1, number 2, number 3, top 5, top 10, top 20? Where do you rank Sebastian Vettel? And then I'll kind of give my opinion on whether you're overrating or underrating him or not. But again, it depends on the person. And I think when Irvine, in his quote there, I think he kind of alluded to, when he said, when he said that Vettel, is a 4 times world champion, I think he's kind of alluding to the amount of titles that people have, and Vettel has the joint 3rd or joint 4th amount of titles. When you put it that way, yes, if you are ranking, the best drivers of all time when it comes to titles, then yes, Vettel is overrated, because I don't think he is as good as his stats say. But again, it depends on who's rating him, how you're rating him, and stuff like that. But guys, let me know right now in the live chat, what do you think about Irvine's comments, and what do you think about Sebastian Vettel as a driver, and how do you rate him? Again, do you think he's the best driver of all time, 2nd best, 3rd best, top 5, top 10, top 20? Let me know in the live chat right now and the comment section, and I'll try to read out as many comments as I can. But just to let you guys know, every weekend when there's not an F1 race, we will be doing This Week in F1 live on the channel every Sunday afternoon in the UK. So don't forget to subscribe, either bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there, or click on my channel name, go to my channel page and subscribe to the channel, and hit my notifications bell to get notifications for my videos like this video. And again, comment down below what you thought of this video, and comment down below what you think of Vettel, Irvine's comments and stuff like that. And don't forget as well to check out my 2 latest videos, which includes yesterday's podcast and Friday's video on Max Verstappen. That is also in the description. But let me now go through your comments. I want to see what you guys have to say. Very interested to see what you guys have to say about this, because it has caused a lot of controversy, and I get the feeling that plenty of you have a certain opinion on this. Tonka Toy Truck, you need to separate driving skills from mental skills. It can't, you say that, but the driving skills sometimes are helped by the mental skills, and the other way around. So, yeah. Simon Cragland says, yeah, Vettel is very good at leading at the front, but Hamilton is at least good at leading in the front. Yeah, true, but the thing is, at least with Lewis Hamilton, even if he's not leading the Grand Prix at the end of the first lap, you know that there is a bigger chance that he can come through the field, or climb a couple positions to win the Grand Prix than Vettel can. You kind of feel with Vettel that he does have to get on pole and lead the first lap to win a Grand Prix. And if you look at 2018, I mean, you have Australia, where he got lucky, that's why he won that race. Bahrain, got pole, led from the front at the end of the first lap. Canada, exactly the same. Where else did he win? Silverstone, he didn't qualify on pole, but he got into first at the first corner and led at the end of the first lap and won the Grand Prix, but did have to complete a great overtake on Valtteri Bottas, which is, in my opinion, the best overtake of last season. But then look at Spa, powered past Hamilton on the Kemmel Straight and then dominated the race. So you kind of feel with Vettel that he does need to lead the first couple laps to actually be able to win the Grand Prix, because he's not as good as a Hamilton or Verstappen at passing people to get into the lead of a Grand Prix. But let me just read some more comments. So Tonka Toy Truck says Vettel is as good a driver as the top 5. Well, do you think he is top 5 or not? Because I'm not sure that's a clear enough answer. JB says, I do think Vettel is better than Ricciardo, but they are close. This is the thing. I have to say Vettel is better because we only had one season of Ricciardo versus Vettel, and based on their careers you have to say Vettel is better, really. But if Vettel had stayed one more season and Ricciardo had beaten him, then Ricciardo would have clearly proved that he was better than Sebastian Vettel. But maybe that's a what if video I'll do someday. What if Sebastian Vettel stayed at Red Bull? Tonka Toy Truck, he just has risk/anger management issues. I don't think he has anger management issues. I think he has kind of similar issues to Verstappen, but not as bad. It's kind of emotional issues, if I could describe it. Abysmal Luck says leading in the front is not hard for a good driver. Hamilton, Verstappen, Alonso and Ricciardo can do it just as well. True. And this is the thing as well, leading on from your comment, leading the Grand Prix from the front for a good driver is probably the least hard thing to do during a Grand Prix. So it's not exactly an amazing skill to have. It's a very good one to have, but not an amazing skill to have. Mario Master, I think he needs to be careful though. He sees what Vettel done when he is spectacular. Example, Vettel and Verstappen in Suzuka. Right. E7 Suspect says Vettel with a better mental stability can be top 5. He can. If he had the mental stability of Lewis Hamilton, not that Hamilton is the most mentally stable driver of all time, but if he was as good in that area, Vettel might be a 6-time world champion. He probably would be a 6-time world champion, but he made the mistakes that he did. E7 Suspect says somewhere in the top 7 to 10. That's where he rates Sebastian Vettel. Yeah, that's about where I rate him. My current rating is 10th for Sebastian Vettel amongst all-time drivers. That's not current drivers, by the way. That's all-time drivers. And Prussia says 7th best. I wouldn't say that's overrating him because, again, it's not that many positions higher, but, you know. Francisco says, for me, Vettel was around the bottom end of the top 10. Yeah, that's about where I put him. Croatian Cookie, Vettel is the best. That's definitely overrating him. Right, let me just go through some more comments because there are plenty of comments about this. Abysmal luck. I'd easily rate Clark and Stewart, etc. over him. Yeah, I rate Clark and Jackie Stewart ahead of Sebastian Vettel. Also Niki Lauda and Alain Prost. And you may call it controversial, but Fernando Alonso. I think Fernando Alonso, at this current point, over his career compared to what Vettel has done so far, I think Alonso has to go down as the better driver, in my opinion, of course. Emre, Irvine talks too much bleep, so no one respects him now. That's your opinion. If you think he talks what you said, then yeah, that's your opinion. But I don't think he's that wrong. I actually think mostly he's actually right about Vettel. The only thing I really disagree with him on is the one-trick pony and kind of the massively overrated part, to be honest. And also, can I just say, I will criticise him for the part of the interview where if you go and look at the BBC Sport Formula 1 page and go to the article, he did say that he doesn't watch F1 anymore. Now, that does seem a bit fishy, but the thing is, we can't assume when he stopped watching, so we can't say, well, to suit our narrative, he hasn't watched Vettel ever. He clearly has, because he's been at races, like 5-6 years ago, where Vettel and Hamilton were competing. So he clearly has watched Sebastian Vettel plenty of times, but he just doesn't watch it anymore because, in his opinion, it's not interesting anymore. Right, let me just take a look at some more comments if I can. E7 suspect. Vettel just has not had good enough teammates to push him like Lewis, and when he did have Ricciardo made him look like a number 2. If Leclerc beats him this season, his legacy will be a bit damaged. Not just a bit. Not just a bit. If Charles Leclerc beats him this season and Vettel bottles the championship for the 3rd season in a row, I think Nib, who's in the chat, I can see him right now, I think Nib said this as well, that if he, if he loses to Leclerc and he bottles the title, he's done. How can he possibly recover mentally from that? He can't. So if that does happen, I think mentally Vettel is absolutely done. And I think Ferrari, again, if that does happen, I think Ferrari need to then start planning a replacement for Sebastian Vettel. But let's see what happens. Who knows? Maybe Vettel will surprise us. Nicholas says, I would rank him 6 to 7 all time. And then he gives his ranking where you put him 9th for some reason. But he says, 1st Schumacher, 2nd Senna, 3rd Hamilton, 4th Lauda, 5th Piquet. That is a surprise. 6th Alonso, 7th Gilles Villeneuve, 8th Nigel Mansell, and 9th Sebastian Vettel. That is one surprising top 9 you've given there. I think with Piquet, I just want to make this point as well, because I think people kind of don't see the similarity, but Sebastian Vettel is very similar to Nelson Piquet in terms of Piquet, statistically, you'd think would be ranked as one of the best of all time, but nobody ranks him in their top 10 because of his actual skill and the circumstances behind his victories and, title wins. And it's a similar thing with Sebastian Vettel. Yes, the stats back him up. They clearly back him up, but the circumstances in how he won those races and those titles are not as strong in his favour in terms of where he ranks all time. as it would be for Lewis Hamilton or Ayrton Senna or Michael Schumacher. So, yeah, he does remind me a lot of Nelson Piquet, not in terms of personality, but in terms of the way they are viewed amongst the F1 community. They do remind, or Vettel reminds me a lot of Piquet. Piquet, again, great stats, but people don't rate him that highly, except for Nicholas. And same for Vettel. Vettel has the stats, but people don't rank him that highly based on the stats that he does have. And I think Vettel and Piquet are very similar when it comes to that. When it comes to the way the F1 community views them. Right, let me just, if I can, I'm going to try and read out a couple more comments, and then we will move on to our next story, which is to do with Renault, who are going radical for 2019, which might be a good thing, might not. We'll have to see in a moment. JB, I love Vettel since he left Red Bull. He's my favourite, along with Ricciardo. Yep, I know you're a big Vettel fan. Vettel is a great driver. You need to admit that. I'll admit it. Yeah, he's a great driver, but he's not as great as people think he is. And I think the last couple of seasons has exposed how good Sebastian Vettel really is. I don't think Vettel is as good as his stats say. I don't think Vettel is as good as what a four-time world champion should be, and I don't think he performs like one. And also, I'll make this point as well. When it comes to Vettel, whether he's an all-time great or not, if you look at the greatest of all time, Schumacher, Senna, Hamilton, Lauda, Prost, if you compare those drivers to Vettel, have those drivers ever had so many mental lapses or crumbled under the pressure as many times as Vettel has? I don't think they have. I don't think they have. And that's why I doubt his, or not doubt his greatness, but how great he is, because I don't think an all-time great makes as many errors as he does. And I don't think, the all-time greats would be so mentally weak as he is. Now, he's not, in general, compared to everyone on the grid right now, mentally weak, but compared to Schumacher, Senna, Hamilton, Lauda, Prost, he is mentally weak. You can't doubt that. Right, let me just read out a couple more comments. JB, Vettel deserves like 2 or 3 titles. That's how good he is. I would say maximum he deserves, based on what he's done in his career and the cars he's driven, 3. For me, he didn't deserve to win in 2012. For most of the season, he was not that good. He only really turned it on once the car became good in the last, 6 races. He had good races, but most of them were kind of hit and miss. And even when he had a good race in the first half of the season, it wasn't that good. And he could have probably done better and, finished higher, had more pace, stuff like that. Nicholas says, I low-key believe Webber deserves one of Vettel's titles. The reason I don't think Webber deserves to win the title in 2010 is because if you compare him to Vettel with the whole career thing, that was Mark's mistake. That's not bad luck. That's just, he touched the white line, made a mistake, and he paid for it like you should in F1. You should pay for your mistakes, to a certain degree, of course. If you look at Vettel, he had, compared to Webber and Alonso, he actually had a lot more bad luck than people remember. For example, Bahrain, he was leading the Grand Prix, then he had an exhaust failure or some kind of engine issue. Then in Australia, was leading again, then had a brake failure. Where else? In Spain, I think he was in second and his brakes failed again, or his brakes were going a bit faulty. And there was another race. Where he had bad luck. Oh, Korea. There you go. Korea 2010. Leading the Grand Prix, and then his engine fails with about 10 laps to go. So I think Vettel did over the course of 2010, I think Vettel did deserve to win 2010. 2011, of course. 2013, of course. But 2012, no. No. Alonso came so close to winning the title in a car that was a second a lap slower than the fastest car on the grid, which wasn't the Red Bull over the course of 2012, but Alonso was the clear deserving winner of that championship. Vettel's drive in Brazil in the final race was great, but doesn't mean he deserves to win the title that year, and I don't think he did. But I think and Nib saying spark plug. Right, okay, well, spark plug. I thought it was something to do with that, but yeah, he was leading and then he finished fourth because of that issue, and had, yeah, some bad luck in 2010. But hold on, let me just, as people still commenting about this, rookie sim racer Eddie Irvine was right. Turkey 2010. Look, with the Turkey incident and the Spa incident, yeah, he was at fault. But again, you have to look at the course of the season and the results that, you know, they got and what they deserve to get. If you take away reliability issues and stuff like that, bad luck, Vettel deserved, in my opinion, to win the title. Look how many times he was on pole position. I think he did deserve to win it. But anyway, let's finally move on from that. We spent long enough on it. We spent almost 40 minutes going on about Sebastian Vettel. So I think it's now time to move on to our next topic. And we're going to go on to Renault, who have come out and said that for their 2019 car, that everything is different except for the power steering. Meaning that basically they've scrapped the design concept of the Renault car for the last couple seasons and are now going for a radical, I think, concept for 2019. Of course, we don't know what that concept is. We'll have to see once we get to pre-season and the first couple races. But Renault are basically scrapping their design concept from the last couple seasons because they want to close the gap to Mercedes, Ferrari and Red Bull. And you can't blame them because they really do need to close that gap. And Marcin Budkowski come out and said that Renault have scrapped basically the design concept of the last couple seasons and kind of talked up their hopes for 2019. And this is what he had to say. It is always challenging to get a car with thousands and thousands of parts, and the only thing we carried over from last year's car is the power steering. That gives you an idea that all the rest is changing, and it is changing because we are trying to squeeze more performance from every area, and the source there for that story is Autosport, and that is an interesting thing that Renault have done there. But I think, I don't know, I'm just a bit worried about them doing this because even though the Renault car in 2018 was not the best car in the midfield, and it definitely could have done with more more development on the aero side and also the power unit side, they still finished fourth in the constructors. So I don't know. I kind of disagree with them doing this, scrapping, you know, everything they've done and kind of just redoing everything in a different way. And well, the reason I disagree is because there have been examples in the last couple or last 5-6 years that scrapping your concept of designing an F1 car and going with a new concept, sometimes not only does it not work, it massively backfires. For example, McLaren in 2013, after Lewis Hamilton left, they decided for the last year of the V8 era, they decided they were going to go radical and design a completely new McLaren car and not really carry much, if anything, over from 2012. And it backfired massively because they went from the fastest team on the grid in 2012 to, at best, 5th fastest in 2013. And it massively again backfired. And they ended up 5th in the Constructors. And they have not recovered ever since. So proof there that it really cannot work. Of course it can work, but there are examples in the last few seasons that it can go really bad. And also, let's not forget this absolute disaster class from 2018, where Williams, with Paddy Lowe, who in 2018 finally had the chance to design his first Williams car, and he basically scrapped the way Williams had been doing things, pre-2018, and went for a completely new concept for 2018. And, well, I mean, it worked out brilliantly, didn't it? They finished 10th in the Constructors, and they had an amazing 7 points. An amazing 7 points. So what a great job that Paddy Lowe did there. But again, in all seriousness, yes, scrapping the concept of designing your concepts of designing the car and going with a new one, it can work. There is no doubt about that. It can work. But there has been more recent examples of it not working, and not only it not working, but it going absolutely horribly wrong. And I'm just a bit worried that Renault might be going a bit OTT when it comes to the design of their car for 2019, because all they have to do realistically, because we're not expecting them to be 3rd fastest, but all they need to do realistically is be, I don't know, 3/4 of a second away from Red Bull, something like that. They don't need to be fastest in 2019. I mean, of course, they would love to be fastest, but they're not going to do that. So, I don't know, it kind of feels like they're trying too hard when they don't need to. And I'm kind of worried for Renault. I won't lie, I'm kind of worried about this. And I just think it might backfire, and I hope it doesn't, because I don't want this project, which has been making progress since 2016, to go all down the drain because they decided to accelerate their progress way too much compared to what they could do at the time. I don't want them to do that. But anyway, make sure, guys, in the live chat and in the comments section right now, let me know what you think about this. Do you think that this is a good thing for Renault to do, or do you think it's a bad thing? Let me know right now in the live chat, and I'll make sure to read out as many comments as I possibly can. So, hold on, let me clear my throat again. Throat's a bit, not really on song today. Right, let me read a few comments about this, because I can see that some of you are giving an opinion on this. So, right, let's go through the chat and have a look. Tonka Toy Truck, tell me how Renault has improved. The only reason they got 4th this year is because Force India had financial issues and Grosjean totally bottled it for Haas. Well, in 2017, they finished in 6th in the Constructors, and in 2018, they finished 4th. So factually, they have improved. And when it comes to the reasons you've given for why Renault finished in 4th, one, even if Force India kept their points, they still wouldn't have beat Renault. Renault would have finished 4th, and Force India would have been 5th, I believe. And it's not Renault's problem that Grosjean bottled it for Haas. That's Haas's issue, and maybe they shouldn't employ Romain Grosjean if they think he's going to cost them so many points. So, not their problem, and Renault factually have improved since 2016. 2016, they were 9th. 2017, they were 6th. 2018, they were 4th. They've clearly improved. There is no doubt about that. Right, let's read out a few more, shall we? Let me just find a couple. End Panic, they outscored the rest fair and square without updating the car really since the mid-season. That's impressive. True. Also, there's the reason why they should be good next season. Focus development on 2019 early. maybe that's why Renault were at times in the second half of 2018. Maybe that's why they weren't really that good at all. I'm hoping that is why, because then for 2019 they should be a lot better, but we'll see. We'll see. Abysmal luck. I do believe Renault are improving, but the gap to the top is way too big. I have said this before, and I said this in a video I did on Daniel Ricciardo a couple of weeks ago, that maybe Renault haven't made enough progress for people's liking. But at the end of the day, they have made a lot of progress. They've gone from 9th to 4th in 2 years. That is pretty good. And again, they could have made more. I'm not doubting that. They could have made more progress. But for now, they have done enough progress, in my opinion. Abysmal Luck also says, I think they just had the 4th fastest car, but worse reliability than Haas. That's why they needed their mistakes. They didn't have the 4th fastest car, Renault. Haas had the 4th fastest car. There's no doubt about that. Renault had about the 5th fastest car, at times the 6th fastest, but their drivers and their team, or the team, were consistent enough. And Haas, because they're inexperienced, they don't know how to... Not that they don't know how to get results, but they don't know yet how to get them on a consistent basis. So that's why Renault got P4 in the constructors. Simon Craglan, no, Renault would have outscored Force India in 2018. Yep, exactly as I said. I think I did the calculation at the end of the season, and yeah, Force India I think would have finished in 5th. They wouldn't have finished 4th. So even if, even if they kept their points, doesn't really make a difference. Force India still ended up worse off compared to their position in 2017. Abysmal Luck says 9th to 4th is good, no doubt, but they are competing with teams with half their budget. The top have double their budget, as do Honda. That is true. Maybe they shouldn't be competing with teams like Haas, who are one of the smallest on the grid. But you have to remember as well, look what Renault inherited when they came back into F1. They inherited Lotus, who... Lotus in 2015, they were actually quite good, but the reason they were good was not really because of the aero, it was because of the engine in the back of their car. And that's why Grosjean got his podium at Spa in 2015. Once they made it the Renault Works team, because they no longer, of course, had the Mercedes power unit, they were never going to be good in 2016. And they were always going to be, back in 9th or 10th in the constructors. So you have to remember that they did inherit, would I say a mess? Financially a mess, but not in terms of performance a mess, but you know what I mean. Anyway, let's read out a couple more comments, and then we'll move on to our final story, which is to do with possible second race in China and the possibility of a Philippine Grand Prix, which, by the way, not only is it possible, it looks as though it's going to be happening very, very soon. So I'll get onto that in a minute. Simon Craglan, the only thing you can criticise with Renault's progress is their engine. Absolutely. The power unit is the only area of criticism I can really have. The aero could be better, but it is still, compared to the midfield, it's the best in the midfield. So, yeah, the power unit does need to improve, but the aero, for the moment, is good enough. Sebastian, hi Chaz, I haven't seen you for a while. How are you? I'm very good. Hopefully you are as well. I've also noticed that some of you are starting to get back into the swing of things, as we are now a fortnight away from the first car reveal. So nice to see some of you coming back. And yeah, I've got plenty planned over pre-season. In case you don't know, me and Nib depending if Nib is awake or, stuff like that, are going to be doing live car reveal analysis videos about half an hour after each car reveal. And also, I'm going to be covering pre-season testing from the track with a camera, microphone, and all of that stuff. So, yeah, I can't wait for pre-season. Pre-season testing is 3 weeks away. The first car reveal that we know of is 2 weeks away. It's not long, guys. It is not long. But, right, I think I'll move on now to our final topic of this week in Formula One, which is that there is a strong possibility of a Philippine Grand Prix. And also, I think the Formula One managing director or commercial director has come out and said that Formula One would love a second race in China. But the thing with that is, I mean, what other racetracks are there really in that country? The only one I know of is one called, I think, Zhuhai, but I've only seen that game on a video. Seen that track, sorry, on a video game. I haven't actually seen it in real life. And if you take that away, what other tracks are there? I don't really know, unless they go for a Beijing street race. But I'm not sure about that. But the main topic of this, or the main part of this topic is the Philippine Grand Prix. And it's come out that Formula One have tried to trademark Philippine Grand Prix and also Manila Grand Prix. Very, very interesting. And by the way, what you're seeing on your screen is apparently a track that Herman Tilke is going to design in the Philippines. So let me just show you the track. So you can see the pits down towards closer to the bottom of the screen. That's where the pits are, and the grandstand. And if we just look at the tracks, you have a straight, then a bit of an S section, then another straight, and then it looks as though we have about 1,000,000 90-degree corners. Some fast corners, and then a couple little straights, and then the main straight again. But yeah, it looks as though we are going to get a Philippine Grand Prix because Formula One are trying to trademark that. And if they're trying to trademark it, that means that they are in at least serious negotiations for such a Grand Prix. So yeah, that's quite big news. And also, I didn't think of this, but this year, 2019, is supposed to be the last year of the British Grand Prix at Silverstone because the contract after this year's race is up. If they don't get something sorted out, which I'd be surprised if they didn't, then it looks as though Formula One is already coming up with replacements for Silverstone. So I think the possibility of a British Grand Prix not being at Silverstone is a lot closer to being reality than it maybe seems, which is very sad because Formula One should be at Silverstone. It really should. It's such a great track, so fast, so many famous corners, such great racing. Formula One should not be going away from Silverstone. But the more I hear about new races, Philippines, Vietnam, we got that in 2020. The Dutch Grand Prix, that's going to be happening. Maybe not for 2020, but probably 2021 at the latest it'll be happening. It seems as though to me that the British Grand Prix is getting closer and closer. The British Grand Prix at Silverstone is getting closer and closer to not happening. And maybe the British Grand Prix will happen somewhere else like London. Maybe they'll renovate Brands Hatch. Maybe they will. I don't think they will because that track and the facilities are very old, and I don't think it could realistically host an F1 race because it kind of looks exactly the same as it did when they last raced there in F1, which was 1986, I believe. So I don't think they'll go back there, but yeah, this this isn't necessarily a bad thing, you know, possibly having races in the Philippines, but it does make me worried for the future of my home Grand Prix, the British Grand Prix. I don't want it to go away from Silverstone. It'd be such a shame to lose that race. I don't think we will. I think Silverstone will stay on the calendar post 2019, but there is a possibility that it may not. But let me know now, guys, quickly in the chat. What do you think about the possibility of a Philippines Grand Prix? What do you think about this track that Herman Tilke is apparently going to design? What do you think about the possibility of a Grand Prix in Holland? And do you think that Silverstone post 2019 will have Formula 1 racing? Let me know in the chat and the comment section right now, and I'll read out as many comments as I can, as we're now coming to the end of this stream. Right, let me take a look at some comments. Sebastian says, it would be terrible if it moved. Yes, it would. It really would. The F1 Kaiser says, we could go to Brands Hatch. The track is good, but again, the facilities are just not modern enough. So maybe if they, again, renovated it, did it up a bit, maybe they could. But I don't think realistically they're going to. I don't think they are. Simon Cragland, hopefully Silverstone will remain on the calendar, but I am starting to doubt as well. If you asked me a year ago, I would have said absolutely 100 million% Silverstone will be on the calendar for 2020 and on. But right now, it's dropped to probably 70 or 60%. Because again, Formula 1 are making their intentions clear that if they can't strike a deal, Silverstone will be replaced and they won't care. So a deal needs to get sorted, because we can't not have Silverstone on the calendar. It hosted the first ever Formula 1 race. How can you not have it on the calendar? It has to happen. It absolutely has to happen. Simon Cragland, what is your favourite racetrack, Chazza? For me, it's Silverstone. I would probably say Spa is my favourite track, even though the racing in 2018 was poor. Yeah, I'd say Spa's my favourite track because it has everything. It has fast corners, slow corners. It presents everything an F1 car, you know, it presents all the challenges that an F1 car must go through. Uphill fast corners, downhill fast corners, slow corners, long straights, chicanes, hairpins. Couple that with wet weather. It's a great track. I absolutely love Spa. And, well, if that left the calendar, there'd be riots. No doubt about that. Right, let me just look at some more comments. Nib says, so another bleep track designed by Tilke. It's not horrible, but yeah, it's not the greatest track. I wish we'd have, you know, like Malaysia back on the calendar instead, but this is the way things go. But you know what? If it turns out to be a great racetrack, then we have to have it on the calendar, I'm afraid. Astro Stevo, Finnish Grand Prix. Apparently, there is the chances for that are actually increasing for a Finnish Grand Prix. I don't know whether it will happen or not. I'm going to say no, but apparently it's a lot more possible now because I think they have a MotoGP track, or they're trying to design one out there. So we'll see. Tom Tao, if they get rid of Silverstone, they will have a London Street Grand Prix. No way they won't have one in the UK. Yeah, if it goes away from Silverstone, they're going to try and get a race in London. If they can't race at Silverstone, where else can they race? They're not going to race at Brands. They're not going to race at Donington. They're not going to race at Snetterton. It's going to be London. Unless they decide to go to Birmingham, because they used to host, I think, Formula 3000 races. I think the Birmingham Super Prix, I think it was. But that track that they had back then doesn't exist anymore. So we'll see. But yeah, if it's not Silverstone, it's going to be London. Let's be honest. Let me just show that. The F1 guy said the track looks like a bleeping stapler or stapler. Simon Cragland says, I'm going to Baku. Well, hopefully you have fun. And well, Baku, if it's as crazy as the last couple of years, you could be in for a mental 2019 race, especially if the 2019 cars can follow. You could see 4 or 5 wide going down to turn 1. If we see that during the race in the watch along, I'm probably going to scream my so hard that my throat just completely dies. So we'll see what happens at Baku. I really hope that the cars can follow better, because I think Baku will become one of, if not the best race on the calendar. Right, let me just... I'm going to find a couple more comments and then we will come to the end of today's episode. Tonka Toy Truck, get rid of. No, they cannot hang on to them because a majority of tracks are losing money. Yeah. The issue with Silverstone and Liberty is money. Once they sort that out, everything else will be a formality. But I will say as well, yes, Silverstone won a better deal, but the prices for going to a British Grand Prix are extortionate. They are absolutely extortionate. It should not cost as much as it does in this country to go to a British Grand Prix. For example, I went to the WEC in mid-August at Silverstone on the Saturday and the Sunday. If you include tickets, accommodation, food at the track and away from the track, petrol, traveling, all that stuff, we only just about afforded WEC, and the tickets for WEC were very cheap. Very cheap. I think it was, 50 quid at most for the 2 days. For Silverstone, for Formula 1, if we went to that weekend with the same amount of money, we could probably only afford just about to go to Friday practice. That's how much money it costs to go to the British Grand Prix. And I'm sorry, Silverstone can come out and say, oh, well, we need the money and all this stuff, but it should not cost anywhere near as much to go to a British Grand Prix. I don't care what their reasoning is. It is an extortionate amount of money that they charge people. It's terrible. They need to lower the prices. If they want people to come in, want more people to come in on a regular basis, they have to drop the prices. They have to drop the prices. It's way, way too high. But anyway, I think now, guys, I'm going to come to the end of today's episode of This Week in Formula 1. And, well, thank you for coming along, interacting in the chat. And also, if you have subscribed during this episode, thank you very much. And by the way, again, thank you so much, guys, for 2,000 subs. And we're now marching towards 3,000. Hopefully, we can get that pretty soon. But I just want to say, or make a statement, I guess, regarding content coming next week. So next weekend will be the usual Saturday podcast live at 3 p.m. UK time. This Week in F1 next Sunday will only happen if there is enough to talk about. If there is enough to talk about, I'll do an episode, but if there isn't, then I won't. But when it comes to recorded videos between Monday and Friday, the aim is to get at least one video out, which is a video on Lewis Hamilton. If I can, I will try to get 2 videos out, which will be a video on Hamilton and Vettel. But realistically, there will be one recorded video coming out between now and next Saturday. But I'm hoping, if I have enough time and I can, make the video how I want and make sure it's all, good, hopefully I can get 2 videos out during next week or the working week before we get to the weekend. But I'm not going to say for definite whether that will happen. But that's the plan for next week. A definite Lewis Hamilton video. And say a 50-50 on whether the Vettel video will happen during next week. I'm hoping it does, but if it doesn't, then I'm sorry, but you know, I need time to work on these videos and make them as good as possible. So that's why I'm taking more time to work on these videos. But again, thank you guys for coming along. Don't forget to subscribe. Either do it on the bottom right of the screen, you can do it right there. Click on my channel name and go to my channel page and subscribe to the channel and hit the notifications bell for more content like this. Remember, we do This Week in F1 every weekend. There is not an F1 race weekend. So again, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, comment down below what you thought of this video, and comment down below what did you think about what we discussed with Eddie Irvine and his comments about Sebastian Vettel. And what do you think about my opinion on his comments and the people's, again, I'll say, dumb logic when it comes to criticizing Irvine for what he had to say? Also, what do you think about Renault going radical for 2019 and the possibility of no British Grand Prix at Silverstone for 2020 and on, and the possibility of a Philippines Grand Prix and a second race in China? And as well, don't forget to check out my 2 latest videos that are in the description right now. That is yesterday's podcast and my Max Verstappen video I did on Friday. So don't forget to check those out if you have not already. Also, check out or join rather my Discord server, link below in the description. That's the best way to get notifications and to keep up to date with when I am uploading videos. And as well, don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Chaz6110 and check out my website chazrhd.com for more content like this. But until next time, guys, it's been me, ChazRHD. Goodbye.